माणिक्यमौली स्फुरत् तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमां मीनवक्षोरुहाम् पाणिभ्यामलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम् सान्निपातिकज्वर सततज्वर विषमज्वर ग्रह नक्षत्र दोषाञ्चान्या हर हर काली सर सर गौरी गम गम विद्ये आले माले काले बन्धे भज भज विद्ये मख मख विद्ये नाशय नाशय पापम् हर हर दुःस्वप्नम् विध्वंसय विध्वंसय विघ्नविनाशिनि रजनी सन्ध्ये मुन्दुभिनादे मानस्तोषे मानसवेगे शङ्खिनी चक्रिणी वज्रिणी गदिनी शूलिनी अपमृत्युविनाशिनी विश्वेश्वरी द्राविडी केशवदैते पशुपति सहिते भीममर्दिनि धमनी कामिनी शबरी किराती वाचक्री ॐ घ्रं घ्रं झं झं घ्रं घ्रं ॐ घ्रं गुरु गुरु
Namaste, Suprabhatam, Shubhadinam to all our friends who have joined us on the 40th day of the Global Festival of Yoga. It's indeed a very special day for all of us because it's completing the 40-day cycle, and 40 days are considered to be an important set of days in many traditions and for many practices and rituals. And in that way, the Global Festival of Yoga is completing 40 days today, and we have with us Srimati Sujata Ameya ji. I now request Sujata ji to kindly join us for this very interesting session. As you all know, Indica Yoga is offering this program with the idea that the yoga should be understood in its larger perspective, where yoga touches every aspect of our life, and all our resolutions, all our commitments, all our aspirations are put into test in two places. One is in the workplace, and a bigger test is always in the relationships that we hold, that we share, the things that we undergo in relationships. And in this context, we have with us Sujata Ameya ji. I request Sujata ji to kindly come on the screen.
Can you see me?
Namaste, Sujata ji. Sujata ji will be speaking on a very important topic, that is relationship, a mirror and a path to the self. How can the relationships that we undergo, that we experience, what is it pointing towards? How can we make sense of it? And how do we bring in harmony? These are some of the aspects that she'll be looking into. A brief note on Sujata ji. Sujata Ameya is a relationship and self-actualization coach who enables partners in a threshold of marriage to reconnect consciously or disengage gracefully and transition powerfully. So well put. Sujata holds an MPhil in clinical psychology from Nimahans, Bangalore, and has maintained a private practice in Hyderabad, India for more than 28 years. With a transpersonal and integrative approach to psychotherapy, Sujata has helped over 14,000 clients. I mean, note the number, 14,000 couples, families, and groups to use conflict as a catalyst for self-discovery. I think this is one important thing that has come up a few times in our sessions. How can we use a situation, what is troubling to us? It could be a conflict, it could be a painful situation, it could be a tragedy. How can this lead to some new awakening? And that is the core of Sujata ji's work. Conflict as a catalyst for self-discovery and to journey through the trauma of separation as a path to self-actualization. Based on her extensive clinical experience, Sujata has designed The Art and Science of the Beloved. This is a wonderful program that she has come up with, Art and Science of the Beloved, a signature workshop that guides participants to playfully discover how they show up in relationships while enabling them to discern if they require therapeutic intervention. Sujata is the author of When the Beloved Calls, a book of poems and artwork based on her personal experience. So she's the one who is completely immersed in her work, and we are very fortunate to have her to speak on this special, unique area, and an area which is concerned to all of us. I mean, I don't think there's anyone left out of it. There could be other areas which may not touch us, like workplace may not touch a few people. I mean, different areas of life, but this is one area that we can't escape from. Therefore, we are very happy to have Sujata ji. I once again welcome Sujata ji. Swagatam.
Om Shri Matre Namaha.
And I
Namaste.
also welcome all our participants for this wonderful session, and request if you have any questions, kindly put them up in the Q&A box, which we'll be presenting to Sujata ji at the end of the session. Thank you, and over to you, Sujata ji. Namaste.
Thank you. Om Shri Matre Namaha. Namaste and Swagatam to everyone. Thank you, Vinayji, for your kind introduction and warm welcome. I am regularly invited to speak and present at different fora, but I think this opportunity to speak at the Global Festival of Yoga is truly an honor and a privilege, and I wish to explain why. All my life, I have felt like a misfit in both groups, the so-called Eastern traditional people and those with a Western, supposedly modern mindset. I found the former too rigidly rooted and the latter completely uprooted. So I have at best felt like a Trishanku or a fence sitter, you know. Starting June 21st, I had the good fortune of tasting the rich fare curated by Indica Yoga 3 times a day, day after day, and we are on day 39 today. It would be quite accurate to say that these talks have completely crashed my very carefully schedule planned client schedule. You know, it's like you are at a buffet and you want to make sure you would taste every single dish there. So Indica to me represents a platform that invites welcomes, supports, and nurtures open minds and, or rather, inquiring minds and open hearts, which then allows people to bridge and blend the best of both worlds. As a private practitioner in the field of psychological health and family well-being, I believe that is what I have tried to do in the years of my own work. And I feel like I finally come home to my own tribe. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak today. Before I begin, let me give the context to today's topic. If I had a one-line resume, it would read as a diehard romantic who was compelled to deconstruct love. For this, I thank all my clients, my students, and my workshop participants over the years who have unabashedly shared their personal stories and asked their burning questions, which then led me to taking deep dives into this universal human experience and make some sense of it. So the presentation today is a glimpse into what I have understood, and this is a vast ocean, as I'm sure all of you already recognize. Yeah. So let me begin with my presentation. Uh, Vinayji, is that visible to all?
Yes, you can put it on this full screen mode. Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, is that better?
Yes.
And am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, okay. So before we begin, two quick things here. One is in a forum like this, I'm quite anxious that someone will come and ask the question of what do you mean by the self? The Advaitas and the Vedantins and all people in the audience group. So let me put a disclaimer that I'm not referring to either this self or that self, because I fundamentally believe that the little self, what we call the ego or the identity, uh, is subsumed in the bigger self, which is the soul or the essence. So you need both. In fact, I believe this little self is the path and the method to reach there, to reach the higher self. So let's not, hair split there. It's just a path to yourself. Now, layers of that self can slowly unravel as we continue with the journey. So that was one. Second point was relationship, unfortunately, has become associated with the idea of only romantic relationships, whether it is heterosexual or same sex or some other combination, which is sad because some of the principles that I'm going to be speaking of today apply to all relationships. But all these learnings have occurred in the context of working with intimate relationship. So you will find greatest relevance to that area. Yeah. So having said that, I'd like to begin with an overview of what I have learned and what I'm going to be presenting so that we have a context of that. So this, I call it my learning and offering to the world. The search for relationship is a disguised search for oneself. When you fully belong to yourself, you can securely belong in a relationship. Conflict in any relationship serves as a catalyst for self-discovery. Heartbreak in an intimate relationship unlocks a profound opportunity for self-actualization. And purpose does not reveal itself as a grand epiphany. It unfolds very slowly, one conscious choice at a time. Yeah. So let's begin with why do we seek relationship? Now, before I go into this, I invite all participants to kindly sit upright, close their eyes, take a deep breath, let their body relax, and just tune in to their own inner space about what is it about relationship that they wish to understand in today's talk. tune into your inner space and try to find or articulate the burning question. What is it that you're really seeking to understand from attending this talk, from being here today? And while you keep your eyes closed, I'm going to read a poem from my book, which tries to answer this question. So request all of you to keep your eyes closed until I ask you to open them later. This poem from my book, The Beloved Calls, is called Twin Flame. And this is how it goes. Why do I so long for you, my beloved? I feel seen when I see you, my beloved. My spirit is lit when you touch me, my beloved. I feel heard when I hear you, my beloved. I feel cherished when I hold you, my beloved. My soul delights when I behold you, my beloved. So I request everyone to gently open their eyes. So I think this is very clear to all of us. The reason we seek relationship is to feel visible in the eyes of another person. Visibility, according to Nathaniel Branden, an American psychologist, is perhaps a hunger and a need greater than the need for food and water and shelter as well. Yeah. So this is the context in which we begin this search. Now, the fact is, we want to be happy. We need emotional support and security as human beings. We believe that these above two are somehow connected. So we expect relationships to make us happy. When that expectation is not met, we become unhappy. Then we start believing that relationships are the cause of our unhappiness. And then we turn to other relationships for the missing happiness. But the truth is, relationships do not cause happiness or unhappiness. Relationships merely bring out the joy and sorrow and every other emotion and belief that is already within us. In other words, intimate relationships function like mirrors to our inner world. Intimate relationship, by its very nature, magnifies, distorts, and brings to the surface each other's inner reality. Inner reality consists of childhood conditioning, meaning the way we were raised, what are acceptable behaviors, what are not, what is the norm, what is to be done, what should not be done. Unresolved issues, which includes emotions that remain unexperienced and also unexpressed. This could be something as simple as a sibling feeling partially treated, or someone not being able to do what they wanted to do. They wanted to do art and they were forced into engineering. Some such classic, childhood issues. Assumptions. Assumptions are about, oh, it must be this way. If they are talking that way, they must be thinking like this. Those kinds of assumptive patterns. Judgments are about, this is right, this is wrong. This is good, this is bad. This should be like this shouldn't be like that. And expectations, which are most often unconscious, sometimes conscious. Hopes and fears. This is the most critical part. What I may become, and the fear that what I may never become, which you have a sense of, your greatest potential. So basically, inner reality consists of beliefs about ourselves that we don't know that we believe, and their associated emotions. In common parlance, this is called emotional baggage. I'm sure you've all heard this term very often. This results in what I call perceptual distortion. This whole inner reality, this unprocessed mental chatter that's going on inside us creates what is called perceptual distortion. Now, how perceptual distortion occurs? One of the typical ways is stereotyping. So I'm going to give examples in the space of intimate relationship and marriages. Yeah, stereotyping would be a family thinking that oh, the boy has been raised in a city, so he must be open-minded. That's a stereotype. Yeah. Halo effect. Another example, this is about making more than what is available positively, right? So for example, the girl is a doctor, so she must have a very compassionate heart. Yeah, that's halo effect. The assumptive thinking there, or the associative thinking there. Third is projection. Projection has to do with putting on to others motives that actually belong only to you, right? So for example, someone's thinking that, oh, if they have sent the boy all the way to the US, they must be really valuing higher education. Yeah. Selective perception. This happens when emotionally you feel open and connected to someone, and you start ignoring what is fairly visible to some other people. So let's say the person has a habit of smoking and drinking, but you're so enamored with their social position or something, you feel, no, those are small things. Everyone does it nowadays. You know, those kind of justifications are called selective perception. So I've just listed 3 or 4 processes here. The mind has more than a dozen of these distortion patterns, which then causes us to have perceptual distortion. This is how it occurs. And now why it occurs? This is the most critical part. Yeah. Perceptual distortion typically occurs as a response to disowned weaknesses and unmet needs of childhood, which then lead to developing capabilities and talents as a coping strategy in later years. Now, let me give this as give an example here. So let's say there's a child who's being raised in a family which is too busy, which believes in social service, taking care of others, meeting the needs and expectations of all the the groups of people who visit, guests, etc. And this child's own needs, whether they are physical needs or the need for consolation, comfort, emotional support, are not even looked at, not even met, because the adults are too busy doing their own thing. Then this child, over a period of time, is bound to develop the ability of not coming in the way, preempting what is needed by the ecosystem, and proceeding to offer it. So in technical terms, this is called empathy, right? The children from emotionally deprived spaces often develop empathy as a coping strategy, and it becomes their talent. And then they go around offering that to the world and are highly reinforced and rewarded for that quality. Then what happens? Then these capabilities and talents and the personality that evolves around it is what appears as the front or the facade to the world. And this remains underneath like a gigantic iceberg. And then how this inner process, how it impacts our search for the one, the special one. Yeah. So we have the unmet needs and disowned weaknesses. Now, when what I mean by disowned weaknesses, when you felt the need to be held or comforted or looked at or cared for, since it was not met, you decide that that's an unnecessary need or it cannot be met. So let me just, forget it, repress it. Now, the thing with psychological energy within us, in our body, is that it doesn't go anywhere. It simply keeps altering forms and keeps reappearing at the most uncomfortable times, inopportune moments. Yeah. So this unmet need and disowned weakness of one person will find the capabilities and personality of the other person extremely attractive because they have disowned that aspect of themselves. Similarly, this one, right? So then these two can get along very well. They find each other very compatible. There is a lot of chemistry and they feel that they've really found the one. And this results in the delicious pain of what we call falling in love. Yeah. Then what happens after the initial euphoria? These become down, meaning the very reason for which you found each other attractive starts mattering less and less because both of them begin to clamor to have their own unmet needs met by the other person and their own disowned weaknesses be visible to the other person, creating a broken heart and never getting those needs met because neither of them has the inner ability to actually meet those needs. And this results in tremendous loss of personal power and self-esteem. So that's where tragedy begins, yes? Now, when that happens, when the previous pattern continuously goes on for weeks and months and years, which is the story of many marriages, then what happens is the early psychological patterns of emotion management or mismanagement get triggered. Yeah, they are manifested as guilt and frustration, disappointment, despair. You know, the whole world of negative emotions, what we call quote unquote negative emotions, which are actually brilliant guides or escorts to take us to our treasures. Yeah. And then, yet, matter of factly, because we are in a close relationship with this person, we expect the other person to mend our broken heart every time. So how do we mend our own heart? Because clearly the other person does not have the ability or the readiness or the willingness sometimes to try and mend our heart. And also it is not possible. In yoga, they say the body and the mind are related. And I couldn't agree more in the sense of the path of healing of both the physical body and the emotional body, the mind, are the same. So for example, you have a fractured bone. It doesn't matter whether someone pushed you off the roof or you fell in the bathroom or a car hit your car. It doesn't matter. The fact is you have to get admitted in a hospital and have it tied up for a few days and then go through your own physiotherapy. Only then your bone can mend. So it demands your participation. Yeah. If yes, it would be nice if the person who pushed you off came and apologized, but that doesn't really materially matter to the healing in one sense. Yeah. So how do we mend our own heart? By accepting responsibility for our own healing. Only then it's possible to have a thriving relationship. Yeah. Principle of healing, this is a universal principle, as without, so within. What's on the outside is a reflection of what's on the inside. So psychological pain in a relationship opens the door to unprocessed childhood wounds that are repressed in our psyche. The external injury often mimics and mirrors our own internal unhealed experiences. By this, what I mean is, if your spouse looks at you with a certain facial expression, which you interpret as contempt, typically it triggers the shame you would have felt as a child in some situation where, you know, somebody looked down upon you or judged you for not being a certain way or for having done something, right? So it is always something inside that is mirrored in the relationship. And it does grants a profound opportunity to discover and embrace the disowned parts of ourselves. Now, how do we do this? This is the main thing. So this, the how part of it not only is complex, I'm not saying complicated, I'm saying it's complex. It's not very simple. However, it is also very, very individual and unique. So what works for one couple going through discord and strife may not at all work for another couple going through discord and strife, which is why, you know, these canned solutions that you get in magazines and newspapers about this is happening in my life, so what can I do? And someone gives an advice. Those things are somewhat dangerous, if not just plain unhelpful. Yeah. So what I've done now in the rest of the presentation is to give you two principles that are the foundation of all therapeutic work as far as relationships are concerned. So I'd like to call this the relationship Mahavakya. Yeah. This is to do with whether it is intrapersonal, that is inside me, interpersonal, that is between you and me, or social, Human relationship follows the natural rhythm of, natural laws of rhythm and polarity. Rhythm has to do with the cyclical nature of life. All life, if you really simply pay attention, is not linear, is not just after endless growth. It is very beautifully a process of beginning, coming to age, really, coming to its full potential, and then slowly dying actually. So the cyclical nature, rhythmic nature of things in life, and polarity. Polarity has to do with everything comes in twos, meaning there is day and night, there is up and down, there is above and below, there is left and right, there is good and bad. So it's all in polarity. There's nothing that exists all just by itself. So when we talk about peace, we cannot avoid talking about conflict. So the more we run away from conflict, the more lack of peace is created, is what I would say. In fact, I have an insight which says the blinkered pursuit of peace is the first obstacle to, I'm sorry, the blinkered, I'm forgetting what it was. Basically, it means the more you try to avoid peace, the more conflict you will create. Yeah. All right. So let's go to the rhythm part of it, the law of rhythm, the rhythm of every relationship. And this applies both to my relationship with myself and my relationship with others, right? So the first stage of a relationship, and by the way, this again follows the same cyclical pattern. The first stage is connection. This stage is about when you feel a certain openness, a certain unguardedness, a certain spontaneity, a certain comfort when you see a person. And this need not be, as I said, in any romantic space, where there's a compatibility, there's a chemistry, there's fun, there's joy, there's exchange, there's good feeling. Yeah. This is a stage of the honeymoon, as they say, in romantic relationships. Then comes the stage of conflict, which of course I don't need to explain at all what that means. Now, normally what happens is this becomes the biggest roadblock, and people clearly are not aware that it's only a stage, it's not one whole problem or in and of itself. There are two more stages after this. And because of that lack of knowledge, people tend to either butt heads or exit the circle completely. And that, I think, is the biggest tragedy of how we relate to interpersonal conflict. The third stage of conflict, of relationship, is chrysalis. By this, I'm referring to the cocoon that a butterfly remains inside of before it can emerge. It is the pupa which builds a dark little packaging around itself and stays there for a certain length of time before it can emerge out as a functional butterfly. So conflict has this amazing possibility of taking you inwards to really spend time with your own inner demons and emerge as a slightly different person, as a slightly wiser, mature, evolved, expanded person than the one who indulged in the conflict previously. Yeah. Then only the next stage is possible, which is communion. This has to do with a deeper sense of connectedness with the person, something of that transcends all the sensual or the, I'm sorry, not sensual, sense-based attractions and likes and dislikes, and it's at a much more deeper level, right? So as we, and this actually goes through a pattern of what I call the infinity loop, where connection takes you to conflict. It is inevitable. There is no relationship on the face of this earth where there hasn't been conflict. Even if you look at the relationship of the devotees with God, there are so many songs and chants in popular folklore where they are really giving God a good piece of their mind. You know, the bhakti poetry is full of that. You know, being angry at Krishna for not coming on time, or being angry with Vithala for not eating the prasad that this person has taken. So I think conflict is part of any relationship, human or even the human and the divine, right? And then if we take it as an opportunity to go inside, then we can emerge in true communication, communion with the person. And as we go through this cyclical process, what becomes possible or what becomes available to us is the idea of individuation and wholeness. By that, what I mean is, as individuals, just because we have grown to a certain age doesn't mean that we have actually become individuals in our own right. We continue to carry the what do you say, the conditioning, the rules and the musts and the shoulds and the whole story of our upbringing, of our parents, of our extended society, of our ecosystem. We don't really examine and understand and acknowledge or hold or let go things that are truly ours, things that are thrust upon us, things that we have unconsciously absorbed. So individuation is a process of truly coming into your own as a human being, as a person, somewhat distinct from the matrix that you have emerged from. Yeah. And wholeness has to do with the parts of us that we have disowned, not only in terms of emotionality, but also in terms of the masculine and feminine energies. Thanks to patriarchy, where the feminine is grossly undervalued at best or completely, suppressed at worst, and the masculine is given extra, it's looked up to. By this, I'm not referring to gender, I'm talking about the qualities. Thanks to that culture that we are all a part of for a very long time now, we tend to disown certain parts of ourselves. Men tend to disown what is considered feminine qualities, like having emotions, showing emotions, expressing emotionality. And women tend to disown qualities that are considered masculine, which are to do with assertiveness, to speak up, to take a stand, to create some ripples. Typically, we don't do that. So these two processes of individuation and wholeness, that is to be in integrity with all parts of ourselves as a whole person, this is possible when you do this cyclical, parikrama of these 4 stages of a relationship. Yeah. And the axis of connection and communion is the axis of rest and repose. It's an axis of relaxation. And this axis is the one that promotes growth, right? Now we come to the second law, which is polarity. This is to do with how we understand and misunderstand relating with each other. So if we plot these two on a graph, the first bottom left, which is low autonomy and low attachment, causes what is called collusion. By this, what it means is both these people collude with each other for some common agenda, which belongs to neither person, and therefore it causes much confusion both to them and to the others around in the ecosystem as well. Let me give an example of that. For example, in a family, sometimes a daughter and a father collude against the mother and the sister. This is not a consciously done wicked plan, but it is just the way the boundaries or the individuated personalities of these two people engage with each other as. If we have high autonomy and low attachment, it results in what is called detachment. This is commonly a complaint that most women give when they come for therapy, that the husband is really not there, he doesn't really care, how come he doesn't feel it, doesn't he have emotions? So this is where the person experiences a greater sense of self and lesser sense of belonging or bonding. The third is enmeshment. This is to do with talking on behalf of the other person, literally. That would be a very good example. instead of letting the other person have their own thoughts, their own space, their own ideas and preferences, etc. So, for example, um, if a wife is asking, would you like vada for breakfast? The mother-in-law will say, oh no, he doesn't eat vada in the morning. Now that's an enmeshment between the mother-in-law and the son, a grown-up son who is currently the husband. Yeah, that's a good example of enmeshment. I'm giving very simplistic examples. Please don't consider these as some pathological issues. Then the last quadrant, which has to do with very high attachment and very high autonomy, both qualities being on the high, is what truly enables a deeper connection. Now, this is in complete contrast with the popular notion of if we really love and care for each other, we will be, blended with each other like Siamese twins. That is not true. Two people who don't know who they are going to create a disaster in the relationship. So a sense of personal space, personal boundary, autonomy, and a good sense of me is very important for developing a very deep sense of connectedness, attachment, bonding, caring, and love in a relationship. Because ultimately, the measure of a good relationship has to do with two things: strength and stability. Strength is the capability of the relationship to absorb shocks and traumas, and stability is the ability of the relationship to sustain. It's about endurance. It's about fortitude. Yeah, these two are very necessary, and for that you just can't do with one. It is not possible to just say whatever you say I'm okay with. Then you're not in a relationship. You're just tagging along. You're not actively engaged with the relationship. Yeah. So autonomy and attachment are critical for the good health of a relationship. So as I said, strength and stability in a relationship actually is very well illustrated by what the new form of yoga is, right? This acro yoga or something it is called, where there is a balance between the pull and the push. For these people to get into and remain in those exquisite and difficult postures, they have to pull with a certain, strength, and push also with an equal amount of force. Only then that posture remains. So any other combination is not going to work. Now, let me go into what are some of the actionable things we can do to make these things work for ourselves? Where do we begin the self-healing and the self-introspective part? Yeah. So I have this model called, by the way, all these models that I'm presenting are not from any books as such. These have evolved over my own work in the last several years. So this is one such model. This is called the 5 pillars of intimacy. We begin with the foundation of exclusivity. This I define as the fact of two people being in exclusive relationship with each other, not just in terms of till death do us part, but in terms of attention. So for example, right now, you are all listening and I'm speaking, and we are in an exclusive relationship because we are paying 100% attention to the task in front of us and not diverting our attention to a phone call or messages or children or something else. The next pillar is respect. This is defined as, even though the other person is different from me, and even though I cannot quite understand them, they deserve my respect. That it is about that. It is not just about please, thank you, and sorry. It is a fundamental interface, a fundamental attitude towards the world of ahimsa, where you do not violate the existence of another person by judging them as being appropriate or not. Yeah, so that's fundamental respect. Next pillar is care. Care has to do with understanding, listening, and paying attention to the needs that are expressed by the other person. We are not expecting to be mind readers and anticipating what the other person is asking for or needing, but at least meeting to the best of our ability the expressed needs of the other person. That is to do with care. The fourth pillar is trust. Trust is, I think, a very, very critical component. It has to do with the congruence between speech and behavior. It's as simple as that. We're not talking about extreme situations of lying, pathological lying, or betrayal and cheating and those kinds of things. We're talking about everyday trust, which has to do with meaning what you say and saying what you mean and doing what you say. Yeah, the congruence. And the last pillar is about commitment. This is a stance that both partners take, that no matter what we encounter on our path, we both will address it as a team. We will address it as players on the same side of the net and not on the opposite sides of the net. Now, this again is the same infinity loop applies here as well. If you have respect, it strengthens care, then it builds trust, and then it definitely reinforces commitment. And vice versa. It doesn't matter where you begin, everything reinforces everything else. By the same token, depletion in one area can begin to deplete the other areas as well. Yeah. So if we bring all these things to a relationship, intimacy is very, very possible. Intimacy is defined as, at least in my work, as the context of giving 100% attention, undivided attention to the moment right now, right here, to whatever is in front of you. If you are in 100% attention to it, you are in intimacy with that. Now, that moment may contain a thing or a action or a work or a commitment or a person, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that is intimacy. Now, on this also, we have the axis of strength, where respect and care for a person will strengthen the relationship, and trust and commitment will create stability and sustainability in the relationship, right? Now here, there is a critical oversight we all make. Usually I ask for this when we have a face-to-face session, but right now, since we don't have a two-way conversation, I'm going to proceed with it. We forget that these same principles apply to ourselves as well. So intimacy, in the way I have defined it, is even more crucial to maintain with oneself as it is to maintain with another person. Yeah. So if we can be exclusive with ourselves when we are doing something, if we can have respect for ourselves, by that I mean not being judgmental or critical about one's own doings and failings. If we can care for ourselves, by that what I mean is, can we really give the necessary nourishment to our body, mind, and soul on a regular, predictable, reliable basis? Can we trust in yourself? By that what I mean is, we are gifted with this thing called an intuition. Can we pay attention to it? Can we give it value? Can we not override it? Can we not put that aside and pay attention and give more weightage to some external resource? Yeah? And then commitment. No matter how hard it's getting, can I still, show up in my life? Can I not give up on myself? Can I say that I'm here till the end of the, till the end of the ride? Yeah. So that is about applying these principles to oneself. So if you can, there is a lot of popular self-help literature that talks about self-love. Self-love is not necessarily just about buying good clothes and taking care of yourself, going on holidays, or for women, being in the spa regularly. It's not just about those superficial things. It's about this very deep and intimate relationship with yourself. Yeah. So please notice that, so here in the relationship with oneself, the respect and the care axis is what strengthens your agency, meaning agency is the opposite of victimhood. Yeah. You are the agent in your life. And the other one creates resilience. This is for oneself. Yeah. Now, yes, this is my favorite slide here. I'm going to just read out the most naked and completely inescapable relationship you have is the relationship with yourself. The most reliable friend, philosopher, and guide who can fully and always be available to you is you. And as you commit to relate to yourself with presence, acceptance, wonder, and support, that is what PAWS stands for, PAWS, presence, acceptance, wonder, and support, you become your own intimate and dependable companion. This is what I mean by being fully in relationship with yourself, belonging fully to yourself, so that then you can securely belong to somebody else or to a relationship. So therefore, I talk about the profound potential of relationship, and I would like to bring the talk to a close by reading another poem from my book, which is called Communion. You may feel free to keep your eyes open or closed, that's up to you. Speak to me, my beloved, just as I speak to you, unabashedly, never holding back a tear nor hiding a fear. Speak to me, my beloved, just as I speak to you of the journeys of my soul and the longings of my heart. Speak to me, my beloved, just as I speak to you, for between our speaking and our listening flows the river of eternal truth, from which we may both sip the nectar of communion, slow and sweet. So with this, I would like to bring the presentation to a close. We are open for Q&A, Vinayji and Anuji. I think we are doing good on time, yes. Uh,
Thank you, Sujata, for this very insightful presentation, especially coming from your long years of practice and completely getting immersed into it. I think that was the most beautiful part.
Thank you.
So we have the questions. The list is starting now. I'll take it up with Seemaji's question, who is asking, as you just said, relationship with God gets broken or annoyed because he did not come in the time and he did not come in the time and snatching someone very close to you and then what to do. So it's especially about the situation where there is a loss and one is not able to connect with Krishna in any manner, be it in doing puja, fasting, which was done earlier with full devotion. Please, anyone help if possible, maybe resource person or any from the panel. I mean, how do you establish the connection? Perhaps that is the question that she's asking when you feel that person did not come to you at a moment when you needed help.
True. Yes. So you use the word loss, Vinayji. So loss need not be about actually losing a person to death. Anything can be a loss. Just any kind of a change from something that you are habituated to or attached to is a loss. So at the time of loss, the human mind needs to go through its own process of healing to come out and reconnect with anyone, including God. So the very famous psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she has created this acronym, which has become the go-to mantra for understanding how the human mind and heart work after an experience of loss. It is captured in an acronym called DABDA, DABDA. Yeah. So when a loss happens, we are first of all in shock and denial. We don't even really let it sink in completely. That's the organism's reaction to protecting the health of the individual. So for example, when corona happened, most of us for a good 2 months were in complete denial. Things were coming out from China way back in November, December, but until February, we were going about our own lives. That's the stage of shock and denial. Then comes anger. Then comes this thing of how can this happen to me? I have done so much pujas for you. I have done various naivedyas for you. I have been such a devoted person. How can you do this to me? So anger. Yeah. Then the third stage, which is bargaining, which is to do with can you if I do this, can that change? If I stop smoking, will restore this? So that stage of bargaining comes. Then comes the next D, which is depression, which is the fall into this deep dark night of the soul, which is just unbearably full of anguish and pain and just heart-wrenching sorrow. And only after you fall deep into that well, you will emerge on the other side of the tunnel, which is the last A, which is acceptance. Once acceptance comes, you will be ready for a relationship again, including with God. So the question here is, when we say, oh, you didn't come and help me, what you believe is help is clearly very different from what God believes is help for you in your process of growth and evolution, in your life's journey. So I may have a certain idea of what is good for me, but clearly the higher intelligence or the divine doesn't believe that. The divine plan for you may be something completely different. I'll give another example because my work is full of these, and I'm so grateful to all the clients who come and discuss these things, right? So classic examples where there's a disabled child, a child with special needs, or a spouse that dies, or various things like that, right? If a person successfully navigates these 5 stages, and this depends on the person's personality makeup, the circumstances, so many variables go into that. So some may recover within 2-3 months, some may take 3 years. So the time is relative. But if they go through this process, they inevitably, without fail, look back and say, I am glad that happened. I'm glad that happened because that has enabled me to become who I am today and to do what I'm doing today. Yeah. So mothers saying, I'm glad this child was given to me because today I am a different person and look at what I'm doing for others in society. Yeah. So what appears to be really unbearable pain is actually God's plan to, make you into a butterfly, to put you through the pupa and emerge you on the other side. So it's also an invitation to question how you relate to God. Is it conditional in terms of, I'm doing all this for you, so you do this for me? Or is it unconditional, where you say, you know what, I really have nowhere to go except you. So now you tell me what you're going to do. Yeah, so the idea of surrender also comes in here. So Simaji, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I mean, you almost, I don't know if you had watched that one of our sessions earlier, we had a speaker and I'm so blessed to have this child because I have grown to be a new person. Like we had a speaker who actually, mentioned this. So,
Yeah.
but it's also like one has to navigate through all these phases, and there's a possibility of one getting stuck somewhere. So how can one get to know where one is stuck and how to move? Are there any helps or anchoring points which will help one to make this transition?
Sure, that's such a good question, Vinayji. So again, like with all processes of life, this is also not a linear progression. This is not a linear progression, right? So it's a cyclical thing. So I give the example of an ice cream cone. If you lay the ice cream cone horizontal on a table, you have the larger spirals on one side, and they keep spiraling down to a very small point at the end of the cone on the last side. So these 5 stages, actually, you cycle like that. You just keep going. What happens is the diameter of the cycle starts reducing slowly. And at the end, the marker of your successful coming out of it is you may have the memories, but it won't evoke the same emotion of pain. Yeah. So that's the marker. Now, how do we decide where are we? It actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether we are in this stage or that stage, or we don't have to find the names and the labels. That's not relevant. I think what is relevant is the model that I spoke about earlier, the 5 pillars of intimacy. Can you look at this situation as an invitation to be intimate, including with the pain, with the anguish, because it is seeking to be seen. The sorrow is seeking to be seen. Can you give it visibility? Can you look at it? Can you really let go and immerse, fall into it? And when you fall into it, you never drown. You never drown. It will somehow float you out, and you actually always emerge a more beautiful version of yourself. So having that faith is important. And in terms of some actual help, depending again on the nature of the person, some may go to meditation, some may go to satsang, some may read books, some may turn to a guru, some may go to therapists like me. It depends. It depends on what works for the person. But the key factor is to not give up on yourself, to not say, I don't know if I'll ever emerge from this. Yeah.
Because I think that is another, I mean, a big challenge is that if they pass through the tunnel, no doubt at the end of the tunnel there is light.
Right.
But to have that fortitude to continue, to stay on, that is challenging for many people. So how do we bring in that assurance that no matter the length of the tunnel, at the end there is light? Because we see many youngsters not able to hold on, like even they can't wait for the results to come, the suicides and so many things.
Yes.
Just with some small upsets, they go to take extreme steps.
Yeah. This opens up a whole other topic of concern, you know. So let me put it in two different ways. So one is when you asked how does one have the fortitude, I think it's a very simple thing right in front of you, but because we don't pay attention, it seems like some profound mystical idea. Just look at life. Nothing is permanent. Neither your joy nor your sorrow is permanent. So if we can hold on to that one piece of knowledge that this too shall pass, and I will not go kicking and screaming, I will walk with it. This one thing, this one idea that no matter what it is, this too shall pass, because that's the nature of life. Nothing will stay. Right? So that's at one level. But you're talking about the poor marks, the not getting admissions, and those kinds of things leading to extreme steps like suicide, etc. I think
I mean,
that's a
even rejection in
yes,
relationship,
rejection.
marriage, I mean, yeah.
Yes, true. Yes. So that I think, unfortunately, Vinayji, has to do with the way our culture has, I would say, devolved in the last 30, 40 years. When I say our culture, I'm not talking only about India. I'm talking globally, where the shift has happened from seeking companionship for life, which included that phrase of for better or for worse, to immediate gratification and immediate quick results, and meeting all your needs no matter what, unconditionally. So people seek so when we talk about finding someone, we are always putting down a list of what we want in the other person. Tall and this and that and good looking, etc., etc., etc. We are the focus is always on what that person should be. There is zero focus on who will you be in the relationship. How will you be? Who are you going to be? How are you going to show up? How are you going to relate, interact, and deal with things? So the focus on self-development, the focus on what do I bring to the table, what do I contribute to it in terms of both health and conflict, is a completely ignored subject. So then when you engage with the world, including the world of relationships, with the attitude of entitlement, that since I've done all this, I must have it. Since I am, tall, handsome, and graduate from a IIM, I must have this wife who will listen to me. That entitlement in the way of your thinking, same applies even for entrances. Since I've been to the best coaching center and studied for 45 hours a day, I have to get a seat. No, it doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. Life is about, I will do my best, and the result is never in your hand. So there is a big deficit, big gap, big flaw in the way we have brought up our generation, this new generation. And I feel as parents, we all have to take responsibility for it. It's tragic. It's really tragic that there is no depth in your engagement with life overall. So that is, of course, showing in both, love and work, as you said, both in professional and personal domains. But having said that, I also want to add that one of the most open-minded and adventurous and resilient people are the millennials, the so-called millennials. They are far more honest, far more courageous, far more willing to do what it takes. So I'm also hopeful. I'm also hopeful about these things. But a lot of times this has to do with the upbringing and the attitude that is inbuilt, So
Sujata ji,
yes,
thank you
Anuja.
very much. Thank you very much for addressing such an important topic, and more so in today's time, as I was discussing earlier also with you, that in today's context of the COVID reality, we are suddenly having to spend more time, not just with others, but also with ourselves. Normally, we were so caught up in external engagements that we did not really allow ourselves the opportunity to look at to be with us, to and also to see how we are relating with others in more time than we would have spared previously. And this is causing a lot of misunderstanding, conflict today, and we're seeing that domestic violence is also on a rise. So we'd love to hear your experiences. I'm sure you've also dealt with cases, actual cases in this context. So what would be your advice? What would be your analysis of this situation?
Yes, thank you, Anuji. So this is a question that been asked in every talk, every interview that I've been on, because it's such a live thing. Yeah, you're so right. I think the school and the workplace acted as buffers to all our emotional dramas previously, pre-corona. Now we don't have those buffers anymore. We are in each other's face 24/7, whether we like it or not. So I've been making a rather radical statement on this, that Corona, apart from being the major health pandemic that it is, has actually forced us as individuals, couples, partners, businesses, ecosystems, communities, countries, nations, internationally. It has forced us to confront that which we have been avoiding at all levels, psychological, ecological, social, whatever it is forcing us to confront. So it's almost like that cliched statement, there is no way out but through. There is no way out but through. So yes, it is unfortunate that a lot of domestic violence has gone up. But at the same time, if you look at the proportion of these things, the percentage, thankfully, that's a smaller percentage. The large percentage of us don't have such issues. We just have these other issues, which we've had all along. But now the carpet is not able to take any more things under it. It's all coming out. It's like the more things that you've shoved under the carpet, the larger is the elephant in the room. And now the elephant has occupied all the space. So it's important that we look at these things and do what it takes. Whether it means taking a sabbatical and going on a holiday with yourself, which you can't go physically out. This is symbolic, but really creating that retreat, inner retreat, or whether it means going on a holiday with your significant other, which again means creating time for that getting away, negotiating, speaking, communicating, figuring out how to do problem solving together, reconfiguring the whole relationship dynamics. It is an unprecedented opportunity to look at all these things which we've avoided all along. Yeah. So in a way, the corona is like a gift, like a gift that is like really making us look at everything that we've not looked at. And I think we've to that extent we've actually lived incomplete lives. We've lived half lives because we have how do you say, we have conducted ourselves as per our conditioning, as per the demands of certain real or imagined roles, acquired or thrust upon roles. It has never been in true freedom or true initiative. It's never been about, this is what I truly consciously in my free will wish to do. We've just gone along. So this is an incredible opportunity to really look at ourselves. So I would invite everyone to do that. Yeah.
Yes, as you rightly said, that the opportunity is there, but it's not always so easy to take it. And there is a question that I'd probably like to connect to the discussion we had, is that very often in relationships, misunderstandings occur. That although there are two people who are really fond of each other and they are well wishers of each other, which is the foundation of any relationship, and there is a certain element of trust. But this our participant is asking us that how do we deal with situations when where you're totally misunderstood? In your experience of dealing with different clients, what would you identify as the source of misunderstanding? And how does, maybe I'll just add to that, how does our association with the yogic tradition, how can that give us practical tools to maybe avoid these misunderstandings, or in case we are in a misunderstanding, to deal with it with a greater sense of maturity? So if you could address that whole package.
Sure. Okay, so this is lovely. And also I like the way you've combined the two questions, because the Western approach to how do I deal with misunderstanding is to proceed to have a conversation with the other person and convince them to see the things the way you see. Yeah. And that just opens up another space for misunderstanding. That's all that happens most of the time. Yeah, this is, and please note that this is coming from a psychotherapist whose livelihood depends on conversations. Okay, so so I'm not trying to minimize, but I'm just saying. So I want to just put that aside, that trying to make the other person understand you is the best way to continue the misunderstanding, right? What is happening actually when we speak about, oh, I feel so misunderstood? What's happening here is two things are coming and clashing. From your side, a great need to be seen in a certain way, a great need to be understood in a certain way, in the way you think it is, in the way your perception stands, right? And the other person is looking at it from their own perception and their own projection. And these two are going like this. That is what a misunderstanding is fundamentally, right? So what can we correct here? We cannot correct anything on the other person or about the other person. The only thing we can correct here is ourselves. So what is my problem here? I have a need to be understood, acknowledged, and validated. Now I can examine that need. What does that mean? Why am I seeking that validation? What will I gain if I get that validation? What am I losing because I'm not getting that validation? Why is it so disturbing to me? And is there another way out of this? So when you go in on that self-introspective journey, swadhyaya, as you talk about yoga, yoga will actually enable this much better than any amount of reading, discussions, etc. Because it puts you in touch with the three main components of our existence: body, mind, and breath. And as you come into more and more alignment on these three aspects, you will find that your need for external validation slowly reduces quite a lot. Now, this is not to say that we are islands unto ourselves and we can exist without any mirroring or any validation. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the desperation of it comes down. It becomes a preference rather than a need. Please understand the distinction. I don't need a validation. It would be nice to receive it. So for example, I'm pretty sure of what I'm doing, but if somebody appreciates me, that's great. That's the icing on the cake. The cake is already mine. Yeah. So when somebody says, how can I get over this misunderstanding? It's not a simple tip or something. This is a deeper issue. This is a deeper issue. Now, the second thing is what the other person is projecting on you. You will notice that as you let go the need for demanding validation, the other one for no reason will always understand you. They will understand you. They will not misunderstand you. So it's an interesting thing of how working on yourself creates a very different energetic space in the intersubjectivity between the two people. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, in fact, we have Anjulaji who's saying that so true, have been making that mistake until recently, stepping back and listening and seeing from the other's point of view and changing our perspective. Tall order, but it works and can be done when it can be done. So basically, not just looking at one's own need, but also stepping back. I think it's that stepping back that the yoga tradition offers as a valuable technique for overcoming several differences instead of being engaged and caught up in the storm of the issue, to just step back, get that distance that you said, and then getting a new perspective for oneself, one's expectations, one's all of that. So we also have another, uh, I would say, related question by Dr. Jay Gupta who joins us from Sydney very often. So he's saying, what is the best way to resolve different levels of consciousness at physical, emotional, and spiritual levels between people? Again, another potential source for misunderstandings. He says, is detachment a solution if the opposite person refuses to hear you or is open to understand you? Any tips?
Yeah.
So that's a very usual defense mechanism that one adopts.
This is a big one. This is a very big one. Yeah. There's so many layers to this. Okay. So the first one is our assessment slash judgment that the other person is at a different level of consciousness, or most often an inferior level of consciousness. That's how we always judge, right? I am better or different, or my awareness and evolution is higher, and therefore that person is not understanding me. So we can check on that. We can check whether we are being accurate in the basic understanding and assessment of these things. Second thing, if I believe that I have a higher level of consciousness, then it should allow me to have greater respect and acceptance of the other level of consciousness. That would be a marker for my higher level of consciousness. If I believe that I am more evolved and I'm having a difficulty in letting you be or engaging with you, then I have to question really how far I have come. Yeah, that's the second part. The third part, this brings me to the question of intimate relationships. There's a reason and a purpose we all seek intimacy and sustained intimacy, including marriage, right? In such an equation, this felt, perceived, real, or imagined difference can be very difficult, can be very painful. It can manifest in different ways. And there are the usual approaches of, conversation, dialogue, self-introspection, swadhyaya, distance, stepping back, all of these things can happen. And a certain kind of a renewed equation can be set, can be restored in the relationship. But often it is challenging. It is challenging. And that brings me to the last layer, which is the Buddhist approach. The obstacle is not in the path, the obstacle is the path. The fact that you're having to engage with this person who is different, if not lower or higher than your consciousness, is the way to work with evolving your own consciousness as well. Yeah. So I hope that this sets a few things in perspective. But these are easier said than done. These are daily challenges. These are moment to moment challenges. These are unlimited opportunities for self check and for responding from your highest vision of yourself, from your highest possibility of yourself. And we fail very often, and that's okay. The point is to keep going.
Yes, I think what you said is that being able to, if one feels at a higher level, then to be able to accept that the other person doesn't yet have that understanding and have the generosity of spirit to allow the scope for growth.
Yes.
But I think the challenge also sometimes in that kind of a situation is when you are, even if you want to maintain a respectful silence at times, then you're still dragged into that level of discussion, and that then, unless one has a great deal of self mastery, it's tricky. If one remains silent, it gets misunderstood in another way. If one engages in the conversation and you keeping your situation and having a conversation, it is misunderstood.
Yes.
If you get yourself down to that level, it again creates another story.
Yes. So for that, I have another angle to offer there. You're so right. That is what I meant when I said it's very challenging in intimate relationships, right? So one other thing that is often overlooked in approaches which talk about this self-evolution is pathology. The human mind holds incredible amounts of pathology. By that, what I mean is the behavior may look similar. Somebody wanting to constantly engage you in something negative or lower vibration, as they say. That is okay. But the source from which it is coming, sometimes it may be just momentary vengefulness or momentary loss of awareness. But many a times it has to do with some deeper psychological issue, which is where therapy and psychology come into play. Yeah, I always make this statement that spirituality without personal deep psychological inner work is an ego trip, and psychology without an anchoring and mooring in spirituality is flimsy, it's incomplete. We need both. So it's important to do consciously and to the best of your ability what you are doing, but it's also important to step back and see, what are you dealing with? Is this really a person who has momentary lapses of this consciousness level, or is it a personality disorder? Is it a neurotic situation? Is it some other kind of a problem? Then that requires a different approach. There, maybe you need to go for therapy, maybe you need to take medication, maybe you need to involve other family members in handling the scenario. There's so many things like that, right? So it is a very complex situation with no simple or uniform answer. There are no canned answers to this. It's each one's inquiry, each one's journey, and each one's resolution.
Yes, thank you for that important wisdom tip that you gave us at the end, that there is no simple, general universal solution to this. Jay Gupta ji is also telling us that I hope you write a book with the Indian approach to relationships, and you've got already a market of people who would want to buy that.
Yes, I'm going to be writing. God willing, that should come out next September. Yes.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Would you like to maybe just tell us a little more about that now in the sense of the title or some?
Certainly, I think today's probably the best day to actually make this rather megalomaniac, bold statement. The book, because that'll force me to remain committed and actually do it, because it's been sitting in my laptop from January 2018. And just last week, I told myself, if it doesn't see the light of day by September 1st, 2021, I need to give it up, stop fooling myself. So I would like to call this book The Intimate Riddle. That's the title of the book. And this is to do with, today we didn't even touch marriage. That's a whole other planet. And Indian marriage is a whole other galaxy. So I'm going to write. So it is basically going to be a book for professionals and laymen together, with chapters on the different concepts and ideas, with worksheets after each, which kind of help you go through with it for yourself, and then also get a sense of whether you need intervention, etc. So yes, please send me all your love, blessings, and support. I hope that's
What's the title that we should look out for?
The Intimate Riddle: Relationship, a Mirror and a Path to the Self. That's the subtitle.
Okay.
So today's topic is the subtitle, the tagline.
So this was a trailer to what we can expect, what we can look forward to.
Well, yes, in a way,
In a sense.
but that is it. That is all I have done all my life. This is the only thing I've done. I know nothing about anything else. I know something about this. So yes.
Wonderful. I mean, you touched upon the concept of marriage and the fact that you had bypassed it because it is an independent session,
Yes.
a few sessions. But there were questions related to it, so I'll just take it up if you would like to address it.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Priya, Raviji is saying that marriage as an institution is built based on certain expectations.
Yes.
Accepting the other or failing to keep up the expectation often leads to accepting the spouse as a fellow human being and not a husband. So with acceptance, there is no resentment towards the person, but there is a strong distance that develops to the husband. What do we do? I would just like to do a follow-up question to this, because it's about what would happen when the relationship breaks down. So another participant is asking, I'm wondering what advice you can give if a person has divorced from a partner and still keeps being friends with him, but not because they still have a lot in common, but because she's afraid to move forward. Is it staying in the comfort zone syndrome, a lack of commitment to self?
Okay. Do we have another 2 hours, Anuji?
That was a cocktail punch of two very, very long.
This is like a Pandora's box. Okay. So let me try and briefly address them. The first thing is marriage, how it originated in human history globally and where it is at today are vastly different. Marriage originally had certain other objectives. It was either about territorial acquisition, political collaboration, economic securing, and tribal community. It was about that. You look at it all the way from Mahabharata. Yeah, they would go find women or make alliances for these reasons. It was never about you and me and romance as two individuals. Individual was always subsumed to the larger social ecosystem. And of course, procreation was another reason. So back in the days, even at my parents' generation, I think, if a boy could go out, work, earn, provide, and reasonably protect, he was good enough to marry, and he was a good husband. And similarly, if a woman could bear children, look after them, and take care of the family, she was a good enough lady, and they both had a happening, rocking marriage. It was great. Then comes the, what do you call that? The neo-romantic era, let's say last 50, 60 years in the West and 20 years or so in our country, 20, 30 years, where now marriage is being burdened by things which a whole community can meet, needs which a whole community can meet. For example, earlier we would have sororities, we would have sisterhoods, the bhabis and the nanads and the aunts and the grand aunts and the grandmothers, they would take care of each other's emotional needs as women. Yeah. And men were just, allowed to go do their thing and come back, and they were taken care of and left to themselves. Today, that whole system is gone thanks to the breakdown of the joint family, then the individual family. Now we have, I don't even know if you can call it a nuclear family. It's one parent, one child, especially in the urban setups, right? Now you look at the man to fulfill all these needs that this whole sorority would fulfill, which itself is a problem. The bigger problem is the poor men, and I'm making this very radical, bold statement here, they do not have the ability or the awareness to even respond to what is it that you're asking for, because again of patriarchy, because of the way they are brought up. To be a man, to really claim your manhood, to have admittance into the thing of I am a good man, you are trained and brought up and conditioned to be disconnected mostly from your emotionality. It is considered something very feminine. Even mothers of 2-year-old boys, I have heard them say, don't cry like a sissy. Why are you getting so excited like a girl? Those kind of things happen. So we have a set of men who don't even know what is hitting them, and women feeling very resentful that, oh, I've left everything for you and you're not able to take care of me. The marriage was never supposed to take care of all this to begin with. This individualized romantic intimacy demands on marriage are new. So let's understand that first of all, right? And then, as somebody said earlier, we can relate to people through roles, and we can also relate to people as individuals. And if you relate as an individual, there is an opportunity for friendship, which then allows for dialogue, which then allows for mistakes, which allows for slip-ups and all kinds of things where a more beautiful and a mature relationship can unfold. But if you relate through expectations and entitlements, then it actually derails very, very quickly, which is the reason for such a great percentage of breakups happening, especially in the urban scenario. You'd be surprised, Anuji. It's not just the youngsters who are walking out of marriages. We have people in their late 30s, early 40s, all the way up to their mid 60s who have been married for 20, 25, 30 years, also separating because they feel this redundancy of trying to live a life through these role modelings and role delivery rather than living from your personhood and your spirit. Yeah. So please understand, this is the very complex situation. There are no simple answers. So that's number one. Number two, about the staying in touch with the person that you're divorced from. Now, look, if there are children involved, you are co-parents for life. You can be divorced from each other, but you can't divorce the co-parent relationship. That is going to be there for the rest of your life. So you have to engage, which is fine, which is good actually, that there is some amount of communication still happening and possible, right? But if that is not the case, and you're just in touch because of familiarity, comfort, the old time's sake and things like that, perhaps it is possible that you are undone. No, sorry, you're not completed with that dabda process that I described at the beginning of the session, which is you've not gone through the process of really acknowledging what you lost and letting it go so that you're ready to move forward. There's a video series of mine called Death of Mourning, where I talk about how we have given up the whole concept of ritualized mourning. And we act as though, okay, that's over, let's move on. Tomorrow I have to be good to go. It is not possible. when you have lost something that you've held so close to your heart for so long, until you reckon what it meant to you, you can't give it up. You can't give it up. So even sitting down and writing a list of what happened in the marriage, what did you gain? What did you lose? What new possibilities emerge? Unless you go through that activity, it's not possible to just say, no, I'm done. Legally, we're separated. We should move on. I think we can only divorce legally. I think psychological, spiritual, and symbolic divorce is almost not possible. That person, the memory, that experience, it lives inside you. Now, whether you will give it a room and give it respect and let it be, or whether you will fight with it every day is a choice you have to make. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that was very beautifully stated, and I think a very important takeaway for, I think for everyone in the world who does experience breakup at some point or the other, in some way or the other. So I think that was a very valuable tip to probably write it out. So articulate what has worked, what has not worked, what are the new things that have emerged. I think that's very important. And probably I'm tempted to just take a last question. It's something that I have in my own mind. I mean, there are a lot of questions. This is such a topic that one can really go on for days and days.
Yeah.
Because it is a very close situation for all of us. I mean, we all live through these realities.
On an everyday basis. Yes.
Yeah. So I was just wondering at the end that for a relationship to be solid, for it to last, they say that, Atmanyevatmana Tushtaha is in the, from a spiritual point of view, from the Gita's perspective, that's the best way to be free from a lot of the suffering. But if somebody is acquiring the experience of Atmanyevat, I'm content in myself, by myself, that it sometimes becomes the very source of a lot of problems in a relationship.
Yes.
So how would you like to address that?
I'm glad you're asking this question, because there's something else in the middle we spoke, and I wanted to address something related to this. Even in my presentation, I have said you are the greatest friend, philosopher, guide you can be to yourself. So again, let me say, self-sufficiency doesn't mean that you then retreat from engagement with the world. Self-sufficiency, this quote that you made from the Bhagavad Gita, Anuji, it means that you become so whole and complete with yourself that when you engage with the world, you have no conditions and rules on how it should respond to you. So it is not about distancing, disengaging. It is about engaging 100% with 0% expectation of things being the way you prefer it to be, because you are in a state of non-preference. That is something else. We can just talk about it right now, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. And it's not a permanent state. It is about, even for right now, when I'm speaking with you, can I come at it from a state of non-preference, where I bring 100% of my attention in my wholeness, in my completion, and allow it to be without holding on to how it should be for me. So it is not about becoming a monk. It is about being so full and self-sufficient that you are freely willing to be and participate in everything, because you have no conditions anymore. That is what it is. That is what it is.
But
And it's a long path.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sometimes what tends to happen is that the other, like there is normally a give and take of a certain emotional exchange.
Yes.
So when you find a certain degree of self-sufficiency, there is no requirement in that individual to partake of this emotional exchange. In the sense of, if there is accusation or whatever, there is no inherent need to be part of that, if I can call it a drama, because then you're standing back, you've seen where it can go and you don't want to. But the absence of that engagement can itself be a source of problem.
Understood, understood. So let me also add one more thing here. So we are talking here about difficult engagements. I would like to reiterate one point. No matter how self-sufficient and fulfilled you are, the need for emotional connection will always remain. It is as real and as palpable as our need for food. Okay. So when you are maintaining distance, when you do not want to engage in the drama, it doesn't mean that you don't have the need for emotional sustenance, emotional exchange, emotional give and take. It just means that in this particular relationship, it is feeling very burdensome and it is feeling very costly. That is what it means. Now, the other person can sense that. They can sense that you have a need, but you're not willing to engage because it's been difficult for you. And so it is difficult for them as well. Yeah. So this is an opportunity to actually go do some counseling, honestly, because you can either find out what is the block to the open and positive engagement with each other. Sometimes it is quite clear and simple and removable, or sometimes it is to do with, there is like someone asked the question about the consciousness mismatch. So if one person is operating from the second chakra and the other one is operating from the seventh chakra, we have trouble, we have big trouble, right? So which means we have to then figure out what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Do you want to take a position of, no, we are in it, so I'll just pull along, or you say, no, this is harmful to both of us, so let us separate. Again, these are very unique solutions to each couple, but let me not leave the audience with the idea that self-sufficiency is the best solution to relationships. No, it is not. I think the need for connection and the need for mirroring is vital. It's vital. It supersedes hunger actually. You can do without food, but you can't do without that. You will shrivel. You will become very withered version of yourself if that is not available. So yeah.
Yes, and like you had said at an earlier stage, that looking at a relationship as an opportunity for one's own growth, if we can accept that position in different kinds of ways in which we connect with people, I think that is the personal work that one can do for oneself.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I like to give a quick thing of this, so I use this example a lot. So when we speak about drama in relationships, so it takes two to tango, right? So you are positioned this way and the other one is positioned this way. So vibrationally, you will interact with each other and attract drama. That'll continue to happen. So every time there is conflict, if you go into your chrysalis and keep working, you will slowly, very, very, very slowly, you will become slightly different. At that time, this is not possible. So this person may still come and do this, but if you're studying in this practice and process, this will continue to be like this. What happens sometimes is, unwittingly, without anyone doing anything much, this also changes. And then you come together like this, which is great. But sometimes this will become further strengthened like that. And this will come at you like this now. That's the time to really take a call, So, so I think the problem with all questions in this relationship sessions that I do always is that the question is asked with a preferred outcome. That's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed. I'm really sorry to say.
Your gestures you did to represent the way in which the relationship can evolve were, I think, very helpful, and many of us will remember these movements that you did with the hand as very obvious ways in which we have a choice
Yes.
to act in that particular situation. So we just have one happy story from Raghavanji, who's saying, I'm married to my wife 35 years. Not a day I have ever expected anything. Things happen, accept it, otherwise have no regret. Let go nature. And there is one a funny woman's joke if I may say it. So it says that in a relationship, how does a relationship work? So it says that every man has to remember two things. The first one, that the woman is always right, the first rule. And the second rule is, if ever in doubt, refer to rule number one.
Love
Sorry,
that.
no, it's just on a lighter note. But there was another. Sorry if I can just share this joke because it's one of the very funny ones again. It's about someone asks a couple is celebrating their 50 years of marriage anniversary.
Wow.
So, somebody walks up to the husband and says, tell me the secret. What was it? So he says, very simple. Just had got married. We were on a honeymoon in Missouri, and we were going down this very narrow passage on two mules. So then her mule, she was going in front and her mule stumbled. So then I got down and then I heard her say under her breath once. Then again she went forward, again her mule stumbled and I heard her say twice. Third time and again she said thrice. And the next time that the mule stumbled, she just got down, took out a gun and shot it. So then I said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I heard her say under her breath, once.
Classic.
Anyway, but it's a very
Good
tricky
one.
one, It's a very tricky
Yes.
one as to
Yes.
who's got the gun and who has not, and it's very tricky. So, but I guess
So I want to say something to this. Jokes are very revelatory about what's going on actually. So this is one of the tragic impacts of patriarchy. So men feel emasculated in handling women because an assertive woman is seen as someone having the gun and who will call the shots at all times. Yeah, that's one side. On the other side, the women will always perceive men as massive oppressors who have to be pleased at all costs, and you should just silently, quietly just live your life. Both of these are the toxic impacts of patriarchy. And this is not true, actually. Nowhere, nowhere. So all the boys group jokes about how the woman is always right, refer to rule number one, is only boys group jokes. That's partly not reality. But it is reality for some people because they have not thought beyond what's going on and why. And so it's an invitation to really inquire about that. And so with the women, the snide remarks and the powder room jokes against men is the same thing. You are taking the position of disempowered victim and trying to quote it in humor and put it away, and that's not okay also. So I have no issues about these jokes being sexist and this and that. I don't belong in that category. I mean, if you can't laugh at things, then there's no point. But they reveal something deeper. And I would invite everyone to really go inwards and look at these things. Yeah.
yes, I think that's a very nice note to close the session.
Yeah.
But I'd also like to request you to please share your details by which or through which people can reach out to you. So if you would like to kindly let us know that. And people are expressing their gratitude. They're saying that, I'll just share some comments. We have Beena Sraniji saying heartfelt gratitude. It was going through all the interactions in life. Veronica G from the US, again, a very regular participant like Beena Ji, is also saying my highest gratitude for the session. And thanks, Dr. Ameya, for sharing this very helpful experience. We have again Barbie Lina Ji who's saying thank you to the organizers and speakers for this valuable talk. I mean, there's a lot of gratitude because you've touched upon a core topic which many of us need to listen to, need to remind ourselves on. So you've put up your details there. Could I just now make the announcement for the evening program, and I'll come back to you and request you to please share a tip for our participants on how to ensure lasting relationships, meaningful, healthy, lasting relationships, or whatever you think is the best note to end on. So,
Sure.
Kotiji, could I please request you to put up the poster for the evening session? So this evening, it's interesting that today our sessions are around, counseling, people who might have a certain issue and how do we deal with that. So we looked at it through relationships in the morning. In the evening, we are going to look at how the practices of meditation, so the use of meditation and yoga with psychiatrist or psychopathological patients, uh, how does how does meditation affect such people? And it's going to be presented by Jacques Wien, who's a French doctor, psychiatrist, and author. He's also a spiritual guide and a meditation teacher who did his entire education and practice in Europe initially, but then found home in India. So he spends his time between these two these two continents, and shares about his deep interaction with masters and how to bring that to his work. So please join us on this. I think it's going to be a very insightful presentation for all of us. So with these few words, Sujata ji, may I request you to kindly share your message?
Uh, so I'm going to say something controversial, maybe, I don't know. When we look at what is attractive, what is really attractive, it is anything, whether it's an animal or a person or a painting or anything, which is engrossed in itself. That is attractive. If you look at the difference between erotic art and pornography, for example, that's the distinction. That's the distinction. In erotic art, the characters in the art piece are engrossed with themselves, with each other. They're there. They're 100% there. In pornography, it's the other way around. It is for the viewer, or it is performance oriented. It is not engrossment oriented. That's a huge thing, right? So what makes you attractive, or what appears attractive, always has to do with someone who has completely immersed in themselves and emerges from there with newer and newer light and wisdom and beauty and whatever it is, creativity, etc. Right? So my parting words would be: make yourself the prime project of your life. Have a deep intimate relationship with yourself. Go on a date with yourself. Be a companion to yourself, first of all. And then you look so full of yourself in a positive way. That phrase is usually negative. You're so effulgent with that it's great when people interact with you. Then you bring beauty and wisdom to that interaction, and you receive beauty and wisdom as well. And it's a upward cycle. It uplifts both. It takes everyone higher up rather than pulling down. So that would be my closing statement. Give companionship to yourself first, second, and always, and all other companionships will fall into place by themselves. Yeah. So thank you so much.
I felt compelled to come in for a moment before saying the last words of gratitude, because this is one theme that has come at least in two contexts earlier, whether in the field of yoga, or we also had sessions on music and nada yoga, even there, to be a performer or a sadhaka, as you just brought it out. So even in the field of yoga, one can completely be a performer, a mesmerizing performer, but what is happening to the inner dimension is a question. So, and in fact, that's what you brought out at the end. Like even in the relationships, you can have a performance of a relationship, everything is fine, beautiful, but how fulfilling it's for you at the inner side, for yourself, and being connected. I think that was the most beautiful part. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you so much.
And I also would like to add one more thing. You were mentioning about the book, and many our friends are also asking. So, Indica Yoga or Indic Academy will be happy to have the book launch or any support that is required in this context.
Okay. I'm so grateful. So grateful. Like I said, I feel I've found my tribe. I've come home. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.